We were working in the lab late this fall when we thought of a question to ask you all. Yinz Dahn to listen. I am Greg, aka Cookbook Thor, the god of thunder and halupki, and I am joined as always by.
And I am Rob, aka Jibs Warrior, and back in the saddle. Since I missed so much in October, I started off November with a bang. So we got a couple of things to talk about today. Greg, what's on the agenda?
Indeed, we do. We attended two pretty awesome events in recent days, and we're going to tell you all about them. First was the Monster Bash, which is a retro horror convention that has taken place in Western PA since 1997. And this fall, it was at the Marriott Pittsburgh North in Mars, PA, Cranberry Township, and it was packed full of family-friendly monster fun for kids of all ages. And it's a must see if you love the classic monster movies. And had some fun guests, which we'll be discussing. And the other event was a meeting of the Sons of the Desert, which is the name of the international fan club for the classic comedy duo Laurel and Hardy. Um, their chapters are called tents, and each tent is named after a Laurel and Hardy film. And our local chapter is the Swiss Miss tent, and it has a rather famous co-founder in his own right, and we'll be telling you all about him as well. And um, the beautiful day in the neighborhood that it was when we got to meet him.
Yes, yes, something that I've been meaning to scratch off the bucket list of celebrity meetings for quite some time was taken care of at the Sons of the Desert meetup for sure.
Likewise.
Um, so I know that Monster Bash has been near and dear to your heart for quite some time. You actually introduced me to Monster Bash. I the first one that I attended was not at this location. It was at not far. It was at the Sheraton Four Points, um, which is, I would say straight as the crow flies, probably a mile away from where it has been the last few iterations. But I know that they do what, two a year, a summer and a fall. So this one was the obviously the fall iteration, and it's always, I mean, it's something that I always circle on the calendar now since my first introduction to it, because you never know what you're going to find. It's to me, it's like it's as nostalgia as you can get, in my opinion. I think you think the toy shows that we frequent and some of the conventions, we harken back to nostalgia, but you always see a little bit of the modern. This is pretty much nostalgia, or even further than nostalgia for me. And I get the biggest kick out of it. And the last show in the summer, and then this show, I brought my son to both shows, and he is now, he's 12 years old. He's now a can't miss Monster Bash type of person. So, that is and he goes to the toy shows and the conventions and stuff like that, but now he's like hooked because of some of the stuff that we'll get. And we'll get into what we picked up this go around. But I know in the past I've been able to get, he did, he had talked about a X Plus. For those of you who are familiar, X Plus is they're very much into the Godzilla, the kaiju figures, more like premium statues type of things. But there was one that he was chasing for quite some time. It was a Tyrannosaurus Rex figure from the original King Kong. And I looked at it on eBay, and we were always looking for it at toy shows. And we went to Monster Bash just to go to Monster Bash because we don't like to miss it. And there it was. So it's that kind of show where you don't even expect to see something and you end up taking it home. It's fantastic. So, and this last iteration was no disappointment either. But I know you have much more um, experience with Monster Bash, and can probably spin some incredible yarns about your experiences at that show.
Oh, I've got a few, I must confess. Yes. And this one was no exception to that. Yeah, I started going to that show in probably Oh, I'd say 2008. It used to be actually much closer to home for us at the Days Inn in Butler, PA,
Mm.
a little bit north of its current location, which is was really nice to be able to just roll out of bed and be there 10 minutes later. But
Yeah, yeah.
uh, yeah, they've had a pretty good list of celebrity guests. It's not an autograph show, but there are usually a few guests of honor there that do sign autographs, and um, there's always some cool events of that nature. I think the second year I went, my son was a little boy, and the featured guest was Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible Hulk,
Oh
and
wow.
we got a picture of the three of us together, and that was a great experience. He doesn't remember it now, but I'm hoping next time Lou comes to town, we'll meet him again, and I'll show Lou that picture and say, "Hey, that remember when we met you all those years ago? Look at us now."
Yep, yep. And I
So
know
that's
that
something to look forward to for the future.
yeah, they had well, in the summer they had Dan Roebuck, and he's almost
Yes.
become a regular. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, shame on you. Dan Roebuck's great, but probably most recognizable recently as Grandpa or the Count in the new Rob Zombie Monster film. So definitely a featured player in that film, and he was also in the most recent Terrifier movie.
Yep.
And got the brunt of Art the Clown's wrath. But Dan is he's a great guy,
Yes.
and that's yeah, you're not going to get your um, if you listen to our Steel City Con episode, you have that kind of talent and that kind of folks who come into shows. That's not Monster Bash, like Greg said. It's not an autograph show. Um, I think one of the coolest things about Monster Bash is that they have a dedicated space for monster movies, and in that genre. And we're not talking they throw a DVD in and play it. They bring in projectors and screen movies from original reels, with a bunch of different kinds of projectors. So you're getting cuts that you don't see. You're getting people's personal collection of films being shown, and then the guests that they have, typically they show a film that has some sort of connection with the guest, and they do like Q&A and things like that. So I didn't get a chance because this fall show was kind of a stop in and shop and look around for me a little bit. But Greg, did you get any chance to sit down and watch any films or partake in any of those activities?
I did. I did. I managed to take in two films. First of which was Isle of the Dead, starring Boris Karloff, which is a pretty good spooky one from the 1940s. Um, it was. I don't recall if I had sat down and watched it the whole way through before, although I think I own the DVD to be honest. But it's one of those ones where it's on a set, a collection with other movies, and I was more interested in some of the other movies in the set. But but I was glad I finally made time for it because it was worth it. And after that was a TV movie from the 70s that had a role by the guests, one of the guests being former Bond girl, two-time Bond girl, Martine Beswick. She was in both For Martian with Love and Thunderball. And she had a small part in this movie, which starred Richard Crenna. It was Devil Dog, Hound of Hell. And it was basically, if you take the plot of The Omen, but replace the kid with a German Shepherd and add a whole lot of cheese, and you've got a movie that had the whole audience laughing pretty good the whole way through. And um, most movies they show at Monster Bash aren't of the so bad it's good variety, but this one, I would have to put it in that category. And I was certainly glad to see it. Um,
They're not bad movies. They're just misunderstood, right?
that's right. As our friend and Monster Bash regular Mr. Lobo would say.
Yep.
Yeah. And then after that, I got to see Martine Beswick's Q&A session, which was very entertaining. She's got some fun stories to tell about all of her time with the various projects she worked on, and working with the likes of Sean Connery and Klaus Kinski and various other acting legends. And she was a lot of fun to listen to. Yeah, I didn't get to talk to her. I didn't get to talk to the other Bond girl guest, which was Caroline Monroe. I've met her before, though. She's absolutely wonderful. A compliment I'll take with me for the rest of my days was that she uh, told me I was the perfect height to play Dracula when I came wearing my Dracula cosplay, and she thought it was wonderful. And as someone who co-starred alongside Christopher Lee, that meant a lot to me coming from her.
You do have a
And
great Dracula cosplay, so that's
well,
that's
thank you.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Which I think you got to don for another event that maybe we'll touch on briefly, but wasn't part of the main theme, right? You or at least a portion of that outfit, right? It was another event that I'm kind of interested to hear how it went a little bit, but maybe we'll see if we have some time to discuss that one.
Ah, yes. I
Um,
think I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
but
Got a little more mileage out of that tuxedo, which is good.
fantastic. But they, you know, like I said, I didn't get a chance to spend too much time at Monster Bash, but they have a dealer room or a vendor room, and then they have, that's kind of off into one of the larger conference rooms of the hotel conference center. And then the main room is really the folks at it's Creepy Classics, right? That's the folks who put together Monster Bash, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct.
So they have a big space, kind of right in the middle of the main room, and their forte, other than organizing this event, is your monster movies, hard to find movies, or maybe out of print movies. So that's a lot of the time where at least definitely the last two iterations, this one and the one prior, where most of the money that I and my son have spent have been at those tables. And um, it's funny because the last in the summer, my son was requesting movies that I hadn't even heard of until he requested them. So it's getting into that kind of timeline for me and my family life, where my son is like, "Hey, we should check this out. I saw this on YouTube," or something like that. But the Valley of Gwenji was the big one from the last show, and something I had never seen before. My son had never seen it all the way through, just bits and pieces, but that sparked it. So this time around, he had one thing on his mind, and we had trouble finding it, and Greg actually found it. He
Mhm.
wanted a copy of Son of Kong. We looked, alphabetical order. We looked, couldn't find it, and then Greg was able to spy one that was a double feature with the original King Kong and Son of Kong. So that was the big score. That was what was on the list. But you know, being the show, it is what it is. We were able to get some other ones. There's a vendor at this show that I discovered last time. I guess he's probably been there before, but I really took a fancy to his wares in the summer, and he was one of the main reasons why, regardless of scheduling of timing, I was coming back. Was a gentleman who carried a lot of uh, luchador films, particularly
Mhm.
Santos. One of the original luchador actors. But what's funny is these films are luchadors and monsters and kaiju and all kinds of stuff. But I didn't buy any of those. I personally only got a Santos filmography book. So I can kind of get a little bit more familiar with maybe what I'm looking for. And it's actually excellent. It's really more of a reference book, but it has a lot of information about each film, the directors, things like that. It's not just a list; it's a guide to all of his films. And it has the story, kind of a basic plot for the story, and a lot of the information around that. The hardest part about Santo is that most of his films are Spanish. So English dub, if you're lucky. If not, maybe subtitles, English subtitles, and sometimes not even that. So I don't speak Spanish, but it's still entertaining to see that. So, the only thing that I really purchased was that book. We were able to get a colorized copy of Night of the Living Dead, which is interesting to have in the collection. Last time we got a colorized copy of um, King Kong, the original King Kong, I think was one from June. And then I also picked up a copy of Reptilicus off the same gentleman. And then the coolest thing that my son wanted, but kind of wasn't even really interested until I said I wanted it, was a double feature DVD of it's called Silent Roar, the dinosaur films of Herbert M. Dowley. So what this is stop motion animation by a gentleman named Herbert M. Dowley. Two films, The Ghost of Slumber Mountain and Along the Moonbeam Trail. These were basically the first dinosaur movies ever made. They basically paved the way for King Kong, The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. This Ghost of Slumber Mountain was released in 1918, silent movie, and Along the Moonbeam Trail was released in 1921. So these are kind of like OG kaiju dinosaur movies. So, King Kong, Godzilla, Jurassic Park, this was the innovator. So, really looking forward to sitting down and watching those. And, that was to me probably the coolest thing that I picked up at the show. So, really just DVDs, Blu-rays is really what we're kind of after. But there's a lot more than that. There, our friends at Pop Culture Comics, they set up down there. They have a lot of on-theme merchandise that they can sell there,
Mhm.
model makers, things like that. But Greg, did you score any goodies at the show this past weekend?
I did. Yeah. I didn't. I managed to get a decent random assortment of things, and probably the biggest thing I got was from Pop Culture Comics. It was a copy of the Honeymooners VCR board game from 1986. Based on the classic sitcom, and I find VCR board games kind of fascinating. Um, I haven't actually watched the VHS tape in it yet, but it looked nice and clean, and I'm sure it'll play just fine. But it's funny to me because the artwork on the cover has, of course, Jackie Gleason as Ralph Cramden, and he very much looks to me like Harvey Guillen of What We Do in the Shadows fame, but Harvey Guillen wasn't even born yet when this game came out, which
Yeah.
kind of blows my mind to think of that. But yeah, it looks sort of like if Guillermo de la Cruz was a bus driver, he'd be fitting in on the cover of this game. Um, I don't think they've done an episode with him driving a bus yet, but
No.
it could still happen.
Yeah.
Uh, the other good stuff I got was a bag of random uh, dig bin figure goodies, which included the uh, the elusive Burger King Frankenstein's monster from the Universal Monsters Kids Meals from the mid '90s, which I promptly started disassembling to try and replace the batteries because it was made to light up when you hit a switch and Frankenstein's head would glow on the table, but the batteries aren't removable. So you know what? I found a guy on YouTube who showed you how to Dremel it open and swap the batteries out. So I'm doing that, and I just need to buy the batteries because it is cracked open right now, and I don't care if I rip the thing open. I want to see him glow. So that's happening, and a few other little random things with it. What else did I get? I got a copy of the Complete Comic Strip Presents, which was a comedy series in the UK in the early '80s, which included People like Adrian Edmondson, Rick Mayall, Don French, Nigel Planer, Peter Richardson, Jennifer Saunders, who went on to shows like The Young Ones and Bottom and Absolutely Fabulous.
Mm.
And it's really probably the core of the British alternative comedy scene of the 80s, which is for my money, some of the funniest stuff ever done. So I've been enjoying watching that. And the slip cover of the Blu-ray has the mock heavy metal band Bad News on it, which is it's Edmondson, Richardson, Mayall, and Planer. It's basically the UK version of Spinal Tap. If you're not familiar with Bad News, they came up around the same time. They neither one was copying the other. They just both happened to have the idea at the same time, and they're equally funny. And it's good stuff that I strongly recommend. So I was happy to get that all in one convenient Blu-ray package from Severin Films. And I got a few books as well. I
Mm.
got there's always random stacks of comic books to pick through. I got a copy of Warlock and the Infinity Watch #1 from 1991, I believe.
Mm.
And I got a book about knockoff action figures, which is actually going to be a gift for somebody. Uh, yeah, it's Knockoffs by Brian Heiler,
Mm.
who was actually at the show.
Oh, cool.
And the other book I got was Primetime 1966-67 by Tom Beef Stew Shabila, who is another regular at the show. And I was happy to finally pick that up from him. And going through and reading that and enjoying that right now. And the other highlights of my pickups were some literal pickups off the floor because after midnight on Saturday, they have an event called the Prize Toss where
Mm.
it's exactly what it sounds like. Everyone crowds up to the stage in the movie screening room, and the staff gets up on the stage and starts throwing prizes into the crowd for everyone to catch. And so I didn't catch anything big, but yeah, it's the most dangerous part and of the weekend. They warn you left and right, if you don't want to get hit in the head with anything, don't come in here. If you don't want to risk getting hit in the head with anything, I mean, chances are you won't get hit, but you need to have your wits about you for this, but it's worth it. I got a little rubber bat and two super balls with spiders in them, which were picked up off the ground because they were thrown out. I didn't get anything big, but I don't need anything big, so that's okay. Um, and last but not least, I bought another movie off of our friend, the Ed Wood of the 21st century, larger than life personality who has to be seen to be believed, David the Rock Nelson. I bought his newest movie, The Mummy Creeps, which Rock is a guerrilla filmmaker extraordinaire who's been making crazy monster movies in his backyard for the past 30 plus years. And they're never boring, they're always hilarious. And I'm proud to call him a friend. So I was glad to add one more disc to my Rock collection.
And you were on the cover of one of the Rock's movies, were you not?
Indeed, I was, and I was honored by that, deeply honored by that, because yeah, he for many years he would do a video log of the Monster Bash every year, and he decided to stop doing it this past year and just enjoy the show. And I don't blame him. But for the very last one he did, the photo of the two of us together, me and Rock, was the cover. So I am greatly honored that he chose me for that.
And he is just about as entertaining. I mean, when if you look up entertainer in the dictionary, there should be a picture of him. I just think that he is larger than life in some aspects. And if you want to see a taste of The Rock, Greg was able to get some footage, for this very podcast here. I don't think he ever officially mentioned it, but when you roll the camera, you get some stuff. And I went
Yes.
ahead and edited Greg's raw footage to a little taste of The Rock. We posted it on TikTok and Instagram as a reel. So go check that out. It's not the full deal because I think that it's to wet your whistle to come to Monster Bash or anywhere that The Rock is and experience the entertainer that is David The Rock Nelson for sure. So um, it was it was something, and it always is something for sure. So, um, but no, he's great. Like I said, my son first Monster Bash over the summer had a great interaction with The Rock. Basically, a giant spider was involved. It was all we did was ask him for a photo, and when you ask for a photo, just make sure you roll camera, get your screenshot of the video for your photo because you're going to catch some gold, that's for sure. So,
Mhm.
but no, that's fantastic, and even the little bit that I got to peruse his table for maybe like 2 minutes, it's well worth it. It's 100% well worth it. So like I said, great show. I think they'll be back in probably what June. I think is typical timeline for them at Creepy Classics to run it back is June and then fall, right, Greg? That's typically how it goes.
I do believe, yeah. And there's also a show in Canton, Ohio, in August. If you really
Yes.
can't wait between Monster Bashes, so yeah. And they also set up some other shows throughout the year. I know they do the Riverside Drive-In whenever they do shows there, which I always hope I can make it to one of them because those are really nice events in the Pittsburgh area as well.
Yeah, and I think it's just creepyclassics.com is pretty much, you'll find them on Facebook and all the social medias, but they always drive you to the website because they have an online store for some of those hard to find movies and collectibles, everything from one sheets to one sheet posters all the way to monster magazines. I think they actually publish one. Creepy Classics is a regularly published periodical.
Yes, if Monster Bash magazine. Yes, I've actually had articles. I had an article published in it not too long ago.
Oh, nice,
Yeah,
nice.
and I would like to write another. And I have ideas kind of percolating in my head. They just haven't completely taken form on the paper yet, so to speak. But they will at some point, and I will submit it. And I look forward to doing it. It will
I got
probably be toy related. No surprise there.
I got hit in the head by a couple of those at the prize toss. So yeah, over my time. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, those are commonly tossed out as projectiles at the prize toss. Yeah.
yeah, and you think no big deal, but they roll them up, rubber band them into a tube, and they get some distance out of them suckers. So yep, yep.
Yeah.
I haven't. It's been a few times. I'd say it was maybe 2 years ago the last time I was there for a prize toss because it's prize toss and then cake. Did they do the cake in the fall, right? Or is it just June?
They do it both. Yeah. It's this time it was yeah, after the dealer room had closed and after I believe after Isle of the Dead had finished screening, then they did the cake and everyone came out in the hotel lobby and had a slice of either chocolate or vanilla cake, whichever you preferred. And that's another one of the many wonderful rituals of the Monster Bash, and I was happy to partake in that. And yeah, after that was a few more events, and then the prize toss commenced.
Hmm.
And yeah, there's really never a dull moment at Monster Bash. I mean, with the movie room going all weekend and
All weekend,
on
like
yeah.
start to late night. You can. I mean, if you wanted to sit down for a movie marathon, you could do, you know, easy, easy 48 hours of movies. Because they
Hmm.
start, I mean, they kind of start showing films Thursday night during setup. If
Hmm.
and then all the way through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they'll show films. So with the exception of when they're shut down from roughly what 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. That's the only time they're not showing something in that film room. So,
Yep, just a little nap time. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. There's either a film or a game show going on there, which they do stuff like uh, "What's My Monster," which is their version of "What's My Line," which was very entertaining to watch. And they do the Monster Match game on Sunday morning as well, which is always fun. And they'll get their guests involved as panelists on that sometimes, which is makes it even more fun. And yeah, Friday nights is typically the Mexican monster movie night, which
tacos. I remember that was the other thing. I thought there was tacos at some time
there
as well.
is. They hand out tacos and burritos from Taco Bell to everybody in attendance. It's really the only time I care to go out of my way to eat Taco Bell in a year is at Monster Bash, and it just tastes so good when you're about to watch some ridiculous K. Gordon Murray movie or or something starring El Santo or Blue Demon
Yep,
or a
yep.
character of that nature,
Yeah,
which are quite entertaining.
twice a year on Friday night, the Taco Bell in Cranberry Township gets a massive order from the folks at Monster Bash.
Yep.
So uh, they probably dread it as many tacos and burritos come through as that order. But uh, you know, here we are. Thank you, mobile ordering, right? Because that's a big one. I wouldn't imagine I would want to walk up to the counter and order that many tacos.
Hmm.
So, but
Yeah, yeah, it's gotten to be a regular thing for them. And yeah, continuing the food train for Monster Bash, they also hand out breakfast cereal on Saturday mornings. The little single serve size boxes of cereal, and they show cartoons on in the movie room, hosted by, um, I believe, often the Ohio horror host legend Son of Ghoul,
oh yeah,
which is pretty awesome. I've never partaken in that myself because I uh, don't stay at the hotel. I typically am at my own house, but it's something else very much worth doing if you're staying at the hotel. It's really the whole show is just a big family reunion feel. It's
mm-hmm.
yeah, happiness from start to finish. And if honestly, if I could only attend one convention a year, it would be Monster Bash.
Yeah, it does have. I mean, I know, and I have not been going as long as you have, and the minute you like walk up to purchase your admission, you get that sense of welcome from the folks. Everybody gets. It's not like a ticket; it's a name tag. It's your date, Saturday pass, and they put your name right on it. Kids pass, 12 and under were free, but they still get a kids pass. So there is that sense of high school reunion, family reunion type of situation where first names are written right there. I'm sure some folks just put them in their pocket. That's not what they're there for. But there are other folks who are they look forward to it and engage in conversation and common interest, and it's fantastic. I do enjoy it myself as well, and I'm definitely not as deep into it as you have been over the years, but I'm starting to become a Monster Bash regular, and I enjoy the crap out of it. So, all right. Well, if you get, like you said, you get an opportunity, follow them on Facebook, creepyclassics.com for all the information on upcoming shows and things like that. But it's definitely one to circle on the calendar, even if I recommend trying it. Try it for a day. The next time you'll probably want a weekend pass. That's just my prediction for those out in the audience land for this here show. So, Greg, any closing or final thoughts on Monster Bash? I know you highly recommend it as well.
Yeah, it's if you have any interest in the classic monster movies from the silent era up to about 1973, 74, then you really have to check out Monster Bash. It's Yeah, it's an excellent show, and it's unlike a lot of horror cons, it is very much family friendly. There's even a Sunday mornings. They even have a church service for
Mm-hmm.
those families that don't need to go out to so they don't need to go out to go to church. It's really, and I don't know too many other conventions that do that. It's really has that family feel to it, and it's really part of what makes Monster Bash unique and special.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I know that you had a few more days there, but or prior, but on the very next day was a very interesting event. Really in the same vicinity when it comes to locale in Zelienople, Pennsylvania, and I know you touched on it in the opening, but what drew my eye to this was, well, you had mentioned it, and you had teased it there in the intro that one of the co-founders of our tent of Sons of the Desert is a very well-known person that we had both been kind of intrigued about meeting for quite some time. And Greg, you want to do the honors of revealing the tease?
Oh, certainly. Yes. Yeah, the founders of the Swiss Miss Tent of Sons of the Desert are Chad Hunter and David Newell, aka Mr. McFeely of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So, yeah, he's a really a bona fide TV legend in his own right, and he's also a classic film buff. And he was uh, quite happy to come up and visit and bring along some Laurel and Hardy classics to enjoy with us at the Strand Theater in Zelienople. Now, any event where Laurel and Hardy fans get together and show a film is considered a meeting of the tent, from what he said. So this was a meeting of the Swiss Miss tent, and it went extremely well. I have to say, we got to see the silent short "Big Business," which is considered one of their best, and
Mm-hmm.
is included in the National Film Registry as being significant. And the other one was Babes in Toyland, which is sometimes known as March with the Wooden Soldiers, but that's actually a shorter cut of the film. We got to see um, the longer cut under the title Babes in Toyland, which is not often screened. So that was a special treat. And of course, we got to ask questions with David Newell afterwards, and he was happy to tell us a little bit about even about Mr. Rogers being a fan of Laurel and Hardy as well. And of course, we got pictures with him afterwards. And when he said speedy delivery, I became a 4-year-old boy again and was just grinning ear to ear. And I have a feeling I was not the only one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean this event, it was. I mean, if you've ever watched a film, doesn't matter what film, with any audio commentary, this was very much like that live in person. Now, obviously, not during the film because one of the things about the folks who run this, they want to watch the film as well. It's one of those things where they are enjoying it just along with the folks who purchased the ticket to come to the event. And like Greg said, anytime they get together to watch it in a group, that's a meeting. But one of the things that he said that was, almost another, like we talked about Monster Bash, almost another welcoming feel was we are all now members of the tent. It's not an admission type of thing. Obviously there's these two gentlemen are the founders and organizers, but all you do is go show up and you're kind of a son of the desert. And Sons of the Desert is a international fan club named for one of Laurel and Hardy's films, Sons of the
Mm-hmm.
Desert. And like Greg said, this Swiss Miss tent, Swiss Miss was another film of Laurel and Hardy. So each tent, they describe some that are in Europe. Definitely not a strictly North America fan club. It's an international fan club through and through. But discussed portions of both films, talked about some of the people who were in it. Very much a introduction. If you've never, I mean, I think everybody. Well, I'm not going to say everybody. I'd say everybody our age or older has heard Laurel and Hardy. Whether you've seen a film or you've just heard it, you kind of it resonates. It's not like you've never heard that phrase before. I have seen films, not the silent ones so much, but my grandfather would watch them, and it was something that I was familiar with. But for me, up until this point, I didn't know there was an international Laurel and Hardy foundation until this event, and it was it intrigued me. I now have a DVD or two on the way from the Amazon overlords. There's a couple. I actually got to ask a question, raise my hand because everything's going streaming. I didn't know if there was a streaming platform, but I was pointed in the direction of a couple of DVDs, one of which is yet to be released. Laurel and Hardy Year Two. Year One is out, and it's currently en route to my home location. So more to come on that, and I'm sure I'll Greg let you let you take a peruse at that one as well when it comes in. But
I look forward to it.
it was I mean, I really enjoyed it. I really like that theater, the Strand in Zilly. They do more things, more and more. They're opening it up. They'll do live acts. They do movies. They do film festivals like this. It's just a really nostalgic feeling theater. There's a box office beside the theater. All the concessions are $1. It's just the perfect atmosphere to do something like this, and very intimate. They sat on the stage before the films. It was just Sunday afternoon. I don't think that there was a better way to spend a Sunday afternoon, in early November than at a Laurel and Hardy film festival. So it was definitely worth the look. But I don't know, Greg, you're the one who turned me on to it. Was it just something you stumbled upon, or has this been an experience of yours before?
This was just something I happened to uh, come across in the old Facebook algorithm. So sometimes that algorithm is actually good for something, and this was one of those times when it served a good purpose, because I became aware of the a silent film group in on Facebook, and I think I joined that, and that led me to become aware that they were doing a screening at the Strand, and I said, "Hey, this might be cool to see." And Mr. McFeely's going to be there. Wow. Well, I have no excuse. It's a Steeler bye week. This is the place to be.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and from what I understand, Mr. Newell, Mr. McFeely, I think that henceforth during this show we'll just call him Mr. McFeely. He has a pretty extensive, from what he was described, Laurel Hardy collection, movie posters, 13 millimeter films. He even told a story of Mr. Rogers, his son, Mr. McFeely gave Mr. Rogers' children a Laurel and Hardy film regularly for gifts. And when Mr. Rogers passed away, his wife returned the films to Mr. McFeely, and I think he is actively trying to preserve the films, pass them on for future generations. And I think that this is one of those things where I know there was a young gentleman in the crowd, age of 10, I think he said, right, Greg? I think he
yes,
was
he
10.
was.
He was asking questions, and they obviously asked him how he got into Laurel and Hardy, and he said that he found it on the internet. He enjoyed it. His parents were there with him, and his parents offered up the information that the 10-year-old son had turned them on to Laurel and Hardy, and that's why they were there. And I think everybody got a little bit of a chuckle out of that, but also a little bit of a sense of we're going to be okay if we have 10-year-olds who are discovering and turning folks on to Laurel and Hardy, and keeping that genre and those two gentlemen alive. Really, at the end of the day, it's keeping that art form alive, and that's fantastic. Um, but a lot of good information, a lot of fun stories, and then we obviously got to interact with David at the end of the show, which was fantastic. And he was just genuine and caring, and spent time with every single person in line, significant time, which was fantastic. And kind of, they say don't meet your heroes. This is one of the kind of people that you don't have to worry about that with. Um, so I don't know, Greg, if you have any, is there anything else I missed, or anything that resonated with you from the event?
Well, that pretty much covers it. Yeah, he's a wonderful guy to meet. He's still sharp as a tack, and I was very happy to get to say hello to him. And yeah, I'll be adding his autographed picture that he brought, that he signed. He was signed autographs for everybody who wanted one. I will be adding that to my Mister Rogers shelf that I'm working on for my house. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to put it yet, but I've got quite a collection of stuff, and where I put it and how big it is may depend on what size of trolley I find, because I'm low key looking for a trolley to add to my Mister Rogers display. And yeah, he was a good guy. Probably could have talked to him more, because he mentioned W.C. Fields as
Mm.
well, and he mentioned how he thinks Laurel and Hardy's comedy has aged a little bit better than W.C. Fields. Now, I have a W.C. Fields film collection as well, and I was going to start talking to him about my favorite W.C. Fields film, which is called International House, and but I didn't want to hold up the line, So if we go to another tent meeting, which is very possible, then maybe I'll talk to him about it then.
Yeah, I can almost guarantee that I'll be I am now following them on Facebook, which is basically where they pointed folks to Sons of the Desert, Swiss Miss Tent Pittsburgh. They have a pretty decent sized following. They're Pittsburgh's official Sons of the Desert Swiss Miss Tent of the International Laurel and Hardy Society. They also have a website, Sons of the Desert Info, which is kind of just the generalized International Society's website. But they post. Obviously, they talked about how COVID put a damper on some of the events that they had initially planned. But they were kind of picking it back up. They try to do a few of these a year. They bring it to different theaters in Western Pennsylvania. Obviously, look up if you're not in our local area and you stumbled across this on the internet, there is probably a tent near you, which is fantastic. Unfortunately, you don't get Mr. McFeely. We do. We're selfish that way. But there's probably a tent near you, and I recommend a good afternoon or evening, all depending on when your event is, of some really classic, influential films by a comedy duo that one of the things that they said that really resonated with me was there wasn't too many um, actors or actresses that transitioned from the silent film era to the talkies. And usually they said, it wasn't exclusive, but a lot of times folks had an idea in their mind of what this person sounded like. Very much like if you are reading a book, you can imagine what a character looks like. Or if you only talk to someone on the phone, you kind of picture what they look like, and then you meet them and you're like, oh man, it's nothing like I had imagined. Well, back then it was you didn't know what these people actually sounded like. There was no way to do it unless literally met them. So when the films, went from silent to, with sound, sometimes people were, it was almost a shock to hear what they actually sounded like, and it didn't transition well. But Laurel and Hardy were, it was almost like your imagination was fulfilled when they spoke, and they were able to continue their careers after the silent film era had ended. So we got to experience both the silent film first, a short, which was just, for a silent movie, it's just hilarious. It's basically
Mhm.
just them selling Christmas trees and destroying someone's house while that person destroyed their car. Just the comedic timing was fantastic. That it was almost like a game of one up, the damage that could be performed to their personal property versus this person's personal property, and it was uh, it was just just entertaining, considering you know basically considering that this was a silent picture, in black and white, with uh, uh, basically reading cards in between some scenes, but you could still be entertained throughout. And then the next film, obviously, like Greg talked about, was Babes in Toyland. If you're looking that up, it goes by a few different names: Laurel and Hardy and Toyland's Revenge is Sweet. Was the European reissue, and then March of the Wooden Soldier, which was what was advertised for this, which I found was kind of funny as well. This was advertised on the poster outside the Strand as March of the Wooden Soldier. And it kind of wasn't until the movie had ended, when the audience participation was kind of going, where they were like, wait a second, that was probably Babes in Toyland, because it was longer than the March of the Wooden Soldier. It had more, and
Mhm.
the group of folks in the theater literally could pick out which section was the additional footage, which is, you know, obviously well above Greg and I's pay grade, but very
Oh yeah.
interesting to see a fan base from that perspective, that, wets the whistle. It starts you really thinking about it for sure. So, but it was definitely entertaining. And like I said, the Strand is a great place. If you get an opportunity to partake in any kind of show down there, it's entertaining. And the concessions, man, they're only $1. You can't beat that, right? Dollar
Yeah.
popcorn, dollar for a drink. It's just a great little spot in a night in a fantastic little town, Zillionople. Kind of a gem in between a lot of major metropolitan areas. It's kind of like a little piece of history, I guess you could call it, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, so definitely a good Sunday afternoon for the Laurel and Hardy Sons of the Desert Pittsburgh chapter meetup. But any closing thoughts, Greg, on your time on Sunday afternoon?
Well, it was a yeah, it was a great way to spend the afternoon, and I just hope to do it again. And I'm sure they'll be doing it again in the spring here.
Yep,
So
we tried to throw some local hometown. There's a remodeled theater in our hometown that we pitched to them to see if maybe we could have a shorter drive. Not that we drove that far during this last one, but be real nice to, well, for Greg, for you to roll out of bed and walk a few blocks and be at the show. For me, it'd be it's a 3.5 mile drive for me. So we'll see how that goes. But
yeah.
awesome, awesome. So before we wrap up, I teased it, and Greg, I think you brought out a tuxedo for a little event that you attended, that sounded rather interesting. I don't know if you would like to share with the class your experience at that particular event.
I did. Yes, I was at the Barrow Civic Theater in Franklin, PA, and I got to see their production of Dracula. And
in
I put on my
in
tuxedo for that
in
event.
tux.
I did, and
That's
it was an extremely well done production overall. There were great performances all around. There were no photography or video allowed for legal reasons, though, which is common at those sorts of stage shows.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
but that's okay. That's all right. It was a wonderful time. I am happy to report.
Awesome,
It
awesome. Yeah,
was.
I
Very
was
good
at
movie.
a concert. I guess it wasn't recently. It's been a couple years now, where the same situation. A band Tool, they're not big
Mhm.
fans of cell phone footage, so it was heavily policed. A little bit probably more challenging to police that than it was the event you were at, but that's okay. I think that any chance that you have to use the lenses that were put in your head versus the camera lens is probably a little healthy for everyone now and then. So sounded like a great time, and I think you described it as somewhat of a prom situation.
Yeah, indeed. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was, well, at least from where I was sitting. Yeah. Yeah. The goth prom, but there were not too many other people who were dressed to the nines. But I have no regrets.
That is
Hey, we look
fantastic.
good.
All right. So that is it for our topic of conversation for this show. Greg, I think we got some decent events coming up. It is like we had alluded to, early November. If you were listening to this recently, or if you stumbled across us in the future, welcome, time traveler, to November of 2024.
Mm.
So, obviously rolling into the holidays, we have a couple of big conventions coming up, some toy shows, some pop culture conventions, and then obviously some holiday time. And then we roll right on into January, which will be the return of the Butler Area Toy Show, which is very near and dear to our heart because it is our baby, us along with
Hmm.
our third cohort, Ken, who's been a guest on the show. So, we're going to be talking in the coming weeks and months, probably some of the stops we make along the way on the road to bats. We will call it, but we're coming into our, oh geez, what is it now? Six? Is it five? Six, right? It'll be six. I don't remember. Six version of the show. I can't. I'm losing track as we speak. So,
I believe it will be number six.
yep. So we'll be going into six, and we expect a good time to be had by all, but we have a few stops along the way that I'm sure we will discuss on the next few episodes when we can get a chance to get together to record some and attend some shows together, or shows that are worth describing to each other is the best way that I can say it. But Greg, any closing remarks before I wrap us up?
Hmm. Well, check out the Monster Bash. Check out the Strand Theater. Check out the Vero Civic Theater if you're in town.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Please head over to all of your podcast applications and subscribe so you don't miss one of our occasional episodes if you enjoy this sort of stuff. You can also give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can also follow our other entities, KRG Collectibles and Entertainment on Instagram and Facebook, Butler Area Toy Show on Instagram and Facebook, Cookbook Thor Cosplay on Instagram, Pittsburgh Vintage Hockey on Instagram, Rube Waddell Wild Thing on Instagram and Facebook. And if you have any interest in being a guest, submitting a question, or just really chatting, you can always send us an email at yinzdahn@gmail.com. So thank you for following along for those playing at home. But everybody have a good evening, and we will catch you on the next go round. Have a good one, everybody.